Well, good evening. It is good to see everybody. Sorry, been gone 3 weeks. I've maybe forgotten some names. No, I'm only kidding. It is very good to be back home. We enjoyed our time in Texas. Cool weather like we're having here right now in the mornings, but by noontime the Texas heat was coming out. If you've ever been in Texas, it was getting started. It's not summer there yet, but you can tell the Texas heat. I think it's because the land is so flat in those places that sun just has more space to beat down on it. But it was good to be there, but it's even better to be back home, and we're glad.
Was it windy where y'all were?
Yes, we had a lot of wind, and as always when we go through Birmingham, it rains. It rained on us all the way from the time we got into Birmingham all the way to Tyler, Texas, which was not fun at all. But let's turn to number 120. Give me the Bible, and I'm going to try to do the best that I can with this. 120, give me the Bible, the first and fourth verses of this song. Give me the Bible, star of gladness gleaming, to cheer the wanderer, low and tempest tossed. No sword can hide that brave and peaceful beaming, since Jesus came to seek and save the lost. Give me the Bible, holy message shining, thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combine me, till I shall vanish in eternal day. Give me the Bible, lamp of life immortal, hold up that splendor by the open grave. Show me the light from heaven's shining portal, show me the glory gilding Jordan's way. Give me the Bible, holy message shining, thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combine me, till night shall vanish in eternal day. You may go to your classes.
Bring up there. Good evening.
Good evening.
Everybody with us tonight as we continue our studies. We know we finished up chapter 11 last week, dealing with there the heroes of faith, and moving on to I'm going to move on to chapter 12 and look at least for sure verses 1 through 3. And I think go right along with chapter 11, the way they're written there. And some of you said, I've said myself too, it seems like that should maybe be in chapter 11, but you've got to make a cut somewhere. So as we stated last week, just to remind everybody about that, that we talked about if anybody had been around track and field events, they know what this is right here, passing the baton. We kind of talked about that, knowing the importance behind it. And we know that as you think about passing the baton, that it has to take a smooth handoff. And we stated that this is what you basically saw in the Olympics 2012, where America went from first to last in the relay. And so as you look at these things, we know the importance about that, and we know when you think about passing the baton, that many people will use it as a reference. saying they're passing this on to you. Now I'm leaving, so you take care of it, you handle it. And we see those things taking place in that. So we understand that word being saying, pass the baton, besides just dealing in a sense here with what we would find in track and field. Chapter 11, of course, we know the writer of Hebrews showed us what faith looks like, and faith is being a certainty that of things not seen yet, of unseen things, and knowing that God exists. God rewards those who look to Him, who have faith in Him. And we saw that through all those people that we found there in that chapter. We're also realizing that we have these witnesses of faith. We ought to understand ourselves is to live our lives in the way they did. And these people recorded in chapter 11 are witnesses to us of knowing that faith that they had. And so as we look to that, as we left off last week, we started talking about that and understanding that, as we carry this baton, we can carry on what they had started, in a sense meaning that you and I too are able to do the things that we should, look to God, look to Christ, and have so much faith in Him that we know we haven't seen Jesus, we haven't seen heaven, but we know they're there. We know Jesus is real, we know heaven's there, we read about it and see it, and it's just so important to look to that, and that's what the Hebrew writer shows us with these individuals. Last week we read this verse here, but I want us to look at it again because this deals with the verse we're dealing with, chapter 12, the first one, verse 1. So someone go ahead and read this for us, please. Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 1.
Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us.
Thank you. So as we see this, it talks about the witnesses here. In fact, these witnesses here refers to those individuals of faith who they found in Hebrews 11, the writer was talking about. And he isn't saying that they're witnesses of the way, we run our race, of course, because they don't see that. They don't understand. That's not being seen from where they are. And knowing that you and I go too at the same time, just like they were, it's dealing with more with those who are testifying of their faith. In other words, what I mean by their witness to the trustworthiness of God. Remember, some people have a hard time with that, saying, I don't know if it's really scriptural to tell people all about why you decide to follow God. And that's not true. Not at all. Because we know there's examples of it all throughout the Bible. We know Paul was a great person that told many people what he did. And told them about his bad side too, the things he had done wrong, and how he changed, and how Christ came to him, and then how he made God and Jesus his number one, everything about him, what he was going to be a part of. We see even those we talked about in Hebrews 11, they spoke of who they were, what they had done for God, what God had done for them. And when they made those choices and those decisions to follow God. So their faith was just written down on these sacred pages of the Old Testament for us to see, that we speak of. And their testimony confirms the validity of trusting in God regardless of the price that might have come with it. The apostles are great examples of that. We know that every single apostle, they didn't just die in old age. They were all what? They were all killed. They were killed. They were persecuted and killed. And not just killed, they were tortured and killed. And it was all because they decided to follow Jesus. It's because they decided to have that faith found in Him and looking to Him and all that we see there. So the writer here says in these verses here, you notice there it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. So as we think about this verse here, we got to kind of like, what's involved here. Brethren, we know that these are people who show us what real faith is. And that God is worthy of all trust. All trust, everything. And we need to realize that there is nothing we can trust in this world. And really in a sense, because the world can fail, humans can fail, we can make mistakes. Things can happen accidentally, things just take place. But with God, this is what we need to understand. Nothing is an accident with God. Everything is on time, everything is the way God wants it to be, and everything we see with God is for His purpose. So in short, as we look at this, we take up the baton of faith and we run our race just like they did and what we see. So let us be basically the next ones, I guess you'd say, well, always, every generation after that, when they would read Hebrews 11, should want to be better. Should want to make themselves better. And we look at that ourselves as nothing we're saying like, hey, guess what? We're going to outdo the last generation. We're going to make them look horrible. That's not what it is at all. In other words, when we, generations can learn from other generations. And that's what we see with the Bible. We have all these examples written in the Bible so we can learn from them. We have all, I'm sure here, made, a mistake of some time in our life. And it was bad and what we should have done or been a part of, whatever it was. And the worst thing to do is to learn nothing from it. The best thing to do is to learn everything from it and to make yourself better. And that's what we see with the book of Proverbs, the book of Ecclesiastes, dealing with Solomon. Solomon was telling his sons, look, don't be as I was. I did all these things. There's nothing new under the sun. I've done it all. Trust me. And the same thing I know growing up as a teenager, my parents or my grandparents, I spent every summer with my grandparents. I'd go there every summer down to California from wherever we were in the military, different places with my dad. And I would just go over there and, my pop would tell me, I said, I'm going to do this. And he goes, trust me, I've already been there, done that. You don't need to do it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I'm like, so I got to go experience it. And when you experience it, you're like, well, he was exactly right. But that's kind of how humans are. But hopefully we don't do that all the time. So it's hard when someone's younger to really listen to somebody that's older to tell them, I've already been there and done that. And they're like, yeah, but that was a long time ago. Things are different then than what they are now. You go back to Solomon, nothing new under the sun. And how true that is. So we see the Hebrew people here, these Jewish Christians later that are reading this book of Hebrews, it brought them a lot of joy and a lot of understanding and excitement that was there. And so we do the same for us today. It is a challenge for us. And so, in a sense, God is asking us, will you take the baton and run with it? Will you do what needs to be done? Don't sit still. Don't go backwards. Because we know in a race, you don't get to the end that way. And we say, well, it's all about winning, number one. No, it's about endurance, getting there. Yes, making it to the finish line. Of course, we all like to win things. Without a doubt, we like that. But that's not what it's all about when it comes to Christianity. It's about doing the endurance there, getting through it, and finding ourselves in the end in heaven with God. And then when you get to heaven, that is winning. That is the reward that we see there that we have. So now we're going to take this time and run with it, the kind of faith that manifests it's real. We have to look at some things we're going to find here in these scriptures that's going to talk to us again. Verse 1 again. Notice here in this verse, and I want to see if you notice these words here, where it states here. Someone read the underlined part for us, please.
Also let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us.
Thank you. So a lot of times what will happen is someone will read this and they'll read the word lay aside every weight and think that that's just sin. But notice, he separates them. Did you notice that there in that verse? He says, every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. So here this word weight in the Greek, the word literally means anything that is a hindrance, that is a burden. And I like the word hindrance better. Anything that's a hindrance, and what I like about what it says here, notice it doesn't just say weight. What's that word attached before it? It says before, what is the word before weight? Every weight. So in other words, every hindrance from having the faith that you should in God is what we see here in Christ. Now go ahead.
Yeah, that could be anything good. It could be good. From what I remember, it's been a long time since I've looked at that word and the history of it. Even the runners in the races back then, sometimes they had surgery maybe to move the appendix because it was still good, but it was going to hinder them from the race. Racers today, hair is nice. Some will shave their heads completely because that's going to slow them down.
Legs and arms too.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, that's right. Legs and arms, anything is visible that
Yeah.
you see to do that.
And so I'm glad you mentioned that it separated every weight and sin. They're coupled together. You've got to look, because even something good, like when we went to preaching school, we tried to buy our neighbor's house next door so we could expand our property. Well, it didn't happen until I decided I'm going to go to preaching school. And the neighbor came over like 2 weeks later and said, hey, you want to buy our property? There's the devil throwing something good in that weight to hinder me from going on. So,
That's exactly right. I mean, it isn't. And I think a lot of times we think sin is the only thing that keeps us from running our race, to get to God. It's not. It's anything that gets in the way. And we need to realize that there's a lot of things we might have and be a part of, just as long as they're not keeping us from, as long as they're not sin, but as long as they're not keeping us, hindering us from doing what we need to as Christians. And that's what we're seeing. When we look at that there, he says right here, he says, get rid of these things. Because think about what a weight is. Think about what a running. If you have anything that is weighting you down, that is not what you want. You want to be as light as what? As light as possible. Have you noticed over the years how much lighter the shoes continue to get? Track and field. I remember when I was at track and field, when our shoes, they were light, but they're nothing like they are now today. And, you'd have to unscrew your little spike there and put it back in. And, we see that. And, you go all the way back to the beginning of track and field. Actually, I don't know how many know this, but Nike was started because of track and field. It was up in Oregon University. The coach there, he wanted to make better shoes. And because they would run out of their shoes all the time, and it would be terrible the way they ran. So, guess what he used to make the soles? Anybody know the story of that? He used a waffle maker. He used a waffle maker to make the soles as they looked, the little squares that they had. And he made those, and he carved those, made them into a shoe, and he started using those, and it was amazing the difference that it made in having a big sole or something that wasn't cushion enough to kind of make you go and be able to jump better and so many different things. So we see he saw something was hindering them from winning the race, from even being enduring through it, and he figured out a way to fix that. And that's where Nike started. That's how it came about as we see that. So as we think about this weight that is there and sin that's all there that hinders us, is anything that, I think, I like another word used, anything that restricts our faith. Anything that restricts our faith. We understand when someone starts to restrict your breathing, what happens? You can't breathe. What's going to happen after a few moments? You're either going to pass out and they're going to let go, or you're going to die from it. Because we got to have oxygen. We got to have that air. And we see that happening. So that's what we see in that first word of that, lay aside every weight. And then he goes on to continues there and says, let us run with endurance. As we see, I think I have that. Well, there was the weight. There was every weight. I forgot to push through it. There we go. And I'll come back to sin. Sin is pretty self-explanatory. So in a sense, we see there. I just want to separate the two to show us that. But here we look at what's next. Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. In other words, this life gets hard. This life, it gets hard. It really is. It gets hard when things come up that we don't expect. It gets hard when there's any kind of illnesses, injuries, things that are there. And this is what this verse is telling us, this section of it. Don't quit. That's all it is. Don't quit. That's all the devil wants you to do. He wants you to take a break for a little bit. Just take a break from God. And he's fine. You want to come back? Okay. But then he wants you to take a break again. And then again. And before you know it, guess what you end up doing? Falling out of the race. You just quit. And we see that. So as we think about this, no matter what we face, no matter what we might encounter, no matter how long, we must run. How long it's there, no matter how difficult, no matter how many challenges, run with patience and endurance. Once again, I don't know if I use this example or not, but I was a sprinter. That's what I was. I did not like practice. I did not like practice because you know what the coach wanted us to do at practice? Run long distances. I mean, it was to build up our breathing and everything. I was like, Coach, I don't need that. And he's like, yeah, you do. And we do that, and I'd say, no, I can sprint, trust me. Well, I don't know if he did this on purpose one time, Will, which I don't think he did because we basically lost a lot of points because of it. But he told me, he said, you're going to run 400 today, Ernie. I said, not this guy. I said, no way. And he said, yeah, you are. I said, okay, all right, fine, I'll do it. And I get out there, what do you think I did when the gun went off? I'm a sprinter, remember. What do you think I did when the gun went off? I took off as fast as I could. And guess what? I was like, look at all right there. I mean, I'm just flying, getting at it. I get around to the third corner, and guess what happens?
Bear jumped on him.
Oh, something got on me. That weight is hindering me down. I'm like, oh, you get me. But there goes runner one, runner two, runner three right by me. And I'm like, I'm done. And everybody's went from screaming to like, come on. I mean, it was crazy. And there was no endurance in there what I had. And this is what happens with us. So I didn't stop running, but I guarantee you I was out of breath. I was done. And so when we look at this and think about this, it has all to do with patience and not quitting. Patience is so important. You know, we look at ourselves and go, I don't understand why I'm not at this level yet as a Christian, at this maturity yet. Patience. When we talked about last week, not everybody will have the same, learning as a Christian. Different maturity is what Paul talks about. We see that. But it's all about patience, brethren, because with patience, endurance will pay off, without a doubt. And look at what he says when we need to motivates us to run with endurance. He goes on a little further. I love how these verses just build one upon the other. And that is verse 2. Let me see if it'll click for me. There we go. Verse 2. So we'll go ahead and read this for us, please. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2.
Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God.
So this is what he says we need to have to run with endurance. It's keeping our eye on this right here, on Jesus Christ. It says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. When we understand that he is the one that designed us to, in a sense we see, to be like this, to have faith. In other words, Jesus was faith. He shows us that faith. He is faith. He's the author of what all is there. But not just the author of that, he is the finisher of our faith. In other words, without him, we have no faith. Without our faith, we're not going to get to the finish, as we see with Jesus. Dad, go ahead.
Let me ask you this question. When you ran your race, did you look back to see who was trying to catch up to you, or did you look to the goal?
Actually, well, sprinting, no, I never look back. Sprinting, look straight on, boom, right there. And you never look back sprinting, of course. That 400, yeah, I look back, so I thought, I was like, hey, I'm great, I'm beating everybody. And,
The point is that
I always look at the finish line.
our goal is looking to Jesus, and that's where your endurance comes in, because you look to him as the goal,
That's
as
exactly
the
right.
finish line, so to speak.
That's it, that's exactly it. I mean, yeah, anybody runs, that you're seeing, you see that down there at the end, the 100 meters nowadays, it was 110 when I was in, but, you're looking at it, you see it down there, and you're doing everything you can to get to it. You don't worry about the person to your right or left. Let me phrase that for a minute. What I mean by that, in running, yeah, you're going to do it on your own. We need to understand. It works kind of in our Christianity that way, because nobody is going to grab your hand and pull you to heaven. No one's going to bring you to heaven. People can help you. People can help. I can help you. You can help me. In other words, we can continue to build upon our faith with each other. And we see that. And that's because what's greater about this, look at this verse here. When we are all looking to the finish line, when we are all looking to Jesus, we have that one thing in common. And that's to get to heaven. And when people have things in common, they work better together. And that's what we see here. So we need to get our eyes firmly fixed on Jesus. Notice, not just, I know about Jesus. I know who he is. I've heard about him and everything. To really see something means we need to understand it. We need to understand who he is and what he's about. This is a call for us to have a determined focus. Determined focus on everything we're doing. We are to be looking at Jesus and nothing else. We are to not divide our attention, in other words. In that way, that goes back to that running thought. You don't look to the right as you're running. Your intention's right there at the finish line. And that's what we see. And that's how we as Christians
Well,
can do
even
it.
Scripture tells us not to look to the right or to the left,
That's exactly right.
but to look straight ahead.
Yep, because you think about it. When we're running a race, if we look to the right or left, what is it getting at there? What is that T letter word that could be either way to pull us away from God? What's that?
Distracted.
Temptation. It's exactly temptation. Being tempted. And that's what would happen when we see that. He says, don't look that way. There's only one place to look, and that's straight ahead. And we see it. Like I said, if we all have the same goal, guess where we're all going to be looking? Same direction. We're all going to be looking there in that direction as we see. So what happens is, in this world, too often we get distracted by the world. Easy to happen. Easy to happen. We get distracted by the world, and we're being distracted by all the things that aren't necessarily sinful. Don't think I'm saying things in the world, everything's sin. That's not it. That's why this verse before this is so important. Every weight and sin. So it shows us anything that is a distraction, and it's, in other words, it's taking our attention off Jesus. It is so easy for that to happen. I think it's even more easy to happen today in the 21st century than what it was years ago. Because years ago, you didn't have a whole lot of things to do. You went to work, you went home, and you did what?
Ate sunset, went to bed.
Sunset went to bed. I mean, there you go. Nowadays, we have so much going on around us that it distracts us. We ask why. Once again, it's because Jesus is the author and finisher of our faith. He is the one that we want to look to for all things and go to. You know, I think it's interesting. He is our author. You know, what book do we lay down at night with and read? What book do we sit down to and read? Who's our greatest author? You know, I mean, and you know, that really hits home when you think about this verse here. That Jesus is our author. Now I'm not saying we shouldn't, read other things. That's not what I'm saying at all. But don't let those other things distract us from our time to get to God too, as we see in what is found with Christ.
That word author carries with it the idea of leader.
It does.
It's
It
our
really does.
captain, so to speak.
Exactly. I mean, he is. And, when he says, it says the author. That's the importance there. That once again, as we see that definite article that we talked about the other day in Sunday morning class, here's that definite article that Jesus is the author of all that is there. So that's that first part of that verse we see. And the reason these three verses are so important is it's bringing everything up. This is exactly what those people of Hebrews chapter 11 did. This is what they did. This is how they kept their faith in that sense. Let's go ahead and read the rest of this verse here. Let's go and read the rest of verse 2 again. We already read, we read it all, but so I'm going to start with this
Who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God.
Thank you. So, here's with this, carrying that baton of faith will not always be easy. It won't be easy. In fact, it may be the most difficult thing we ever do as a person on this earth, continuing that baton carrying as a Christian. But do we know what the Hebrew writer has just told us? Let's think about that. What has the Hebrew writer just told us in that verse? Anybody see it there? Go ahead.
Well, the first part is, who for that joy set before him, he knew what was the final goal. Salvation for man, eternal reward, and so he endured the cross, despising that shame, and won the race. We face things in life that sometimes we say, I can't make it, I can't do it. But when we look at this, it ought to give us the joy to know that is, just like Paul said, henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, and not for me only, but for all those who, we in a sense, say, endure this life.
Yes, definitely, without a doubt. We see those things of what we find here when we understand that Jesus knew the joy that would come with dying on the cross, because what everybody else would be able to have the opportunity of, even those that had died before his resurrection, as we see before that first day of Pentecost, we'll phrase it to that. But think about this here also. We ask ourselves sometimes, what weight do I have to give up to follow God, to obey God, to look to God? I want you to think about what Jesus gave up to do what he just did.
He gave his life.
He gave up, he gave his life without that. He gave up heaven. He left there with his Father, where they were, to come here. I mean, think about that for a moment. Think about what that by itself took. I always think about Lazarus. I always think about Lazarus. How long was he dead in the grave?
Long enough to stink.
Long enough to stink. There we go. What'd you say, Doug?
4 days.
4 days. I mean, think about this here. And Jesus brings him back. My thought has always been like, what? I'm back here? in a sense, of course, we know you would just be talking about paradise at that point, understanding, but that wasn't the case. But I just think about that. There was a man that somewhat understood what Jesus did, where he left from being with his Father to come to this earth, giving it up and enduring the shame of the cross. Because remember, the cross wasn't just a way of punishment. The cross was the worst and most shameful way to die in the entire world. That was the most shameful way to die. And then sitting down after all that, went on, he was able to sit down at the right hand of God. He has told us that you and I may suffer, we may experience pain, but honor and glory will always follow. Always. That's what we see here. So what Jesus did, let's think about this for a moment. What did Jesus do here? What exactly did all this happen? Well, Jesus is described as the pioneer of perfection faith. I mean, he was. I mean, there's been nobody else in this world that was perfect, except for Christ, is what we're told. And we've seen the description used before, by the writer of Hebrews, that he was that pioneer, in a sense, that perfecter, and the importance comes with it. In fact, Hebrews chapter 2, verse 10, I want us to notice here, if someone will read this for us, please. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 10.
For it was fitting that he, for whom and by whom all things exist, in bringing many sons to glory, should make the founder of their salvation perfect through suffering.
Thank you. I mean, see, what we see here in this, it's kind of the same language what we were reading a minute ago, is that we learn here that Jesus is you always talk about somebody as a trailblazer, that sets the way. Remember, John, we were told that Jesus said John set the way for him, not that Jesus would do what John did, but John prepared that way, got that way going, and where people would come to Christ and so on. But Jesus became that trailblazer, and even John understood that. Because when Jesus asked him to baptize him, what did he say? Did he say, well, all right, yeah, no problem at all, I'll do all this, I'm baptizing everybody else? What was he basically like?
Said he wasn't fit to do it.
I'm not fit to do it, you need to be doing this for me. And of course Jesus said, look, this is fulfillment of the Father, that we need to do this. But we find that and understand that John knew that. Jesus has blazed the path for all of us to follow, to look to. And we're not going down, and this one's important, we're not going down an unknown road. I think some people go through this life going, no one's dealt with what I'm dealing with. That's not the case. Jesus dealt with everything. And he talked about it all. And explained it. Remember, when we talk about it, if we take the whole life, even though it was only 3.5 years, I think about the statement, and then I think about myself and my life for 3.5 years. It says, the lifetime of Jesus, that those teachings that he did in that time, there would not be enough room in what? In all the books of the world. Can you imagine? I'm thinking like, my 3 years, let me see, you fit in a book, no problem. I mean, and it just shows us all the things that he did every minute of the day. I always wonder how much sleep Jesus really got. Because, we see him at times, he would get to the point where he was just wore out. And he'd have to go away for a day or two and, and rest. But we see he was always doing the will of his Father. That's what he did. And we find that same understanding of that's not an unknown road. It's something we can all do and continue in it. We also understand that we're going down the road that Jesus did that. He's our pioneer, the leader, the rewarder of faith, the faith of everything. So that's where I get back when I think about that author. That, that's something we have written down for us to follow and to look to. Not only this, but following Jesus, he will bring our faith to completely to completion. Our faith will come to completion because of Jesus. Jesus has shown us the way, and what we need to do now is just go out and walk it. Did anybody ever taught somebody here how to do a job? How to do something? What do they usually say at the end after they teach you? And they expect you to take up from there. What do they say?
Show me.
Here, I've showed you everything I know. Now guess what?
You're on your own.
You're on your own. You take care of it. That's right. You do it now. And, if you've ever been in a situation where it was something very, like, oh, hold on, whoa, don't leave yet. Here's the thing. I think sometimes we think that Jesus gave us the way in his word, him being the word, and he kind of said, all right, now you take care of it. Here's the thing. God and Christ never leave us. God says, I'll never forsake you. Think about that. Always there. We always have the word to go back to, and to guide us and keep us going in the direction that we have. And that's what we see in these verses so far. I don't have any farther to go. I'm already out of time. 7:45. So as we look to that and understand, as we look at those areas, just let us continue. Remember, the big part here to get is don't stop. Keep running the race with endurance. And knowing that with endurance, here it is, once again, Takes a lot of practice. A lot of practice to continue to do it like that. We say breathing and so on. Well, guess what, brethren? Our food and our breathing is supposed to come from Jesus. And that's what we see in all that we have there. Any comments or questions before I close? Bill?
Most lives can be summed up in 3 paragraphs in an obituary. We have all these books in the New Testament, and then we're told the world cannot contain the things that Jesus did. And despite the temporary victory that the Romans and the Sanhedrin had, they did not write history.
That's right. That's exactly it. I mean, it's exactly it.
The Son of God wrote history.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. It wasn't, they weren't the ones that, well, we're going to make the decision to crucify him and everything. It was God the Father, and we see all with Jesus. And I mean, those are such great words, exactly right, as we think of that.
As long as they could scream it, they were saying, we killed this malefactor, we crucified this malefactor. All the evil things that could be said, but it was never the truth.
It was never true. It's exactly right. I mean, when anything came to Jesus, remember, nobody say they did that to him, or it was already planned.
Right.
Jesus had that, God the Father knew it, and you know that's us. We're destined in a sense, meaning we want to be in heaven. All humans want to be there. We should want to be. We're not guaranteed it, but we know if we follow Christ, we have the opportunity. He says, if we put him on in faith and baptism, we continue with him. He says, I can guarantee you'll be in heaven. But you're not just going to go there because you think, oh, it'd be a good idea to be there. We have to continue with what is there found in the founder that is our faith and our author, Jesus Christ. So any other comments or any comments at all? Appreciate everybody this evening. All right, that's it. Thanks.
Kevin was not there, and, if y'all haven't seen Ernie's text, I appreciate Ernie letting us know anytime he hears anything, he lets all of us know what's going on. The test results are not, they're not good. They're not good. There's other things that can be done. Angela said that they'll have to change the mode of treatment with Kevin. And that change will be in the form of radiation treatment, but he will also undergo chemotherapy. So the things that he had been doing, they're going to change to do something else. And so please keep Kevin in your prayers. We're going to do another scan next week. And what happened was this very important test that was discussed with him today that he had last week. You know, they were hoping, obviously, to always see shrinkages, but they didn't see that. They saw a 3-inch spot. So they're going to check on his abdomen, his liver, his kidneys next week, and let him know. So please pray for Kevin and his family. And Shirley Underwood, Jennifer Underwood's mom, all the tests came out negative for any symptoms coming from the heart. That is really good news. And her heart is good. Now they will follow up with a regular doctor and physical therapy to see if they can figure out what it is causing the pain and numbness in her chest and arm. Could be stress related, don't know. She's on her way home, and she thanks us for the prayers and concerns. It means a lot. Also, Ed Lee has a birthday coming up very soon. May 7th. I think it would be number 75. 76. And that would be, so Sunday, what day is Sunday?
7th.
So it is the 7th, okay, we'll hold the happy birthday. And Dennis just had his birthday yesterday, and we sang happy birthday to him. Dennis turned 72 yesterday. Happy birthday, Dennis. Also, please remember our shut-ins, Annette, Georgia, and Peggy. Let's see, any other announcements? Sunday. We have the graduation celebration recognition of Denver Nail and Reese Canner. We've really got some good things planned, not only with food, but with the program. And we're going to really honor these two guys that have really done a lot to honor us and make us all very, very proud. I mean, I know it's a passage for them, but I realized when I got home with Catherine, it's a passage for me and us too, because we've sat here and watched them grow up completely. And now they're soon to graduate high school. Just can't believe it. So please be here Sunday and bring the family and friends if you will. And we'll be right over there after worship because evening recognizing Denver Nail and Reese Cannon. And I was looking around thinking, who's our next graduate? I think it's Rachel will be the next one to graduate.
Right.
Riley will be graduating. So anyway, we got some great things to look forward to, but this is a really important day, Sunday, so please be here for that. Liam, I'm so glad you're back. So glad you're back. I missed you badly, and I'm glad you're back. Glad you made it back. Ed called me on the way down here. I think he was in Birmingham because all I could hear was rain pounding the windshield of the car, and I was thinking, get off the phone with me. Drive the car. Right in Alabama, by the way. Alabama says, unlike Georgia, you can pick up the phone and call and do everything you want. I just start with the car phone. Any other announcements to be made?
No, I did hands-free. But when you use a car phone, it is very loud, the sounds that you hear. I tell you, Sunday, I preached in Lithia Springs for Brother Larry Acuff, and I went off, well, first off, I don't know how well you know this part about me. I do not like to be late. I abhor being late. I was 4 minutes late. They're sitting there waiting for class to start. And I walk in the door 4 minutes late. Wasn't a good feeling. And then to top that off, I left my jacket, my suit jacket, sitting on the chair at the house. I thought, oh, this is not gonna end well. Oh, but it went okay. It went well. But tonight, I went off and left my glasses. I left my notes that I had for the lesson, so you're just gonna have to bear with me. I've been having problems with this left eye. I went to the eye doctor today, and it just, like Niagara Falls, it just keeps flowing. And they're trying to figure out what's going on there. But I want us to think about, in the book of Numbers, I want us to think about this thought as I read verses 4, 5, and 6 of chapter 21. Numbers chapter 21, verses 4, 5, and 6. It's a story you've heard over and over again, I'm sure. But here's what is recorded for us for our learning. Remember, the Old Testament, the Scriptures are written for our learning. And here's what it says. Then they journeyed from the Mount of Hor by the way of the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom, and the soul of the people became very discouraged on the way. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and no water, for our souls loathe this worthless bread. So the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and many of the people of Israel died. Here's what I want us to think about this. This is one of the, out of all the congregations we've ever been with, it is probably the least problem that we have. But we need to always be reminded about things that we're not troubled with right now, but that might come upon us. The people complained as soon as they crossed the Red Sea. They were complaining about not having good food, not having this, not having that. That you brought us here, you and God brought us here to die. They were complaining against God. And we find that that becomes an issue for them. What happens? God says, oh, you're going to complain, you're going to grumble, and you're going to murmur. Guess what? I'm going to send serpents down, and they are going to bite you. And many of the people died before Moses interceded. And so I want us to think about that, because this wasn't the first time that they complained, nor was it going to be the last time. I want us to think about this, that God does not take grumbling lightly. He does not take complaining lightly. You know, our kids used to come up and say, I want to do this. We say no. Oh, why not? Because I said no. Oh, I want to do it. Well, you keep it up, and you're going to find out what grumbling is like. And our kids knew better than to complain to us. And we need to understand that with God, because sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where we complain when really we're just, our faith has wavered some. Our belief and trust in God has wavered. That's what's happening here with the people in Israel at the Red Sea. They're lost sight of their faith in God, and that God has the ability to provide. It's just like we talked about tonight in running the race. We need to understand that Jesus went through all of this, and that if we take our eyes off of Him and we let the things or the weights of the world beset us, we'll find ourselves complaining or grumbling. And when we don't need to, it may even be that we have a selfish heart. Oh, they thought the food was bad, that God provided. You know, I don't like greens. I'm not a greens eater. I'm not a fish eater. But I don't complain about them. God gave them to us. They're good. They're just not good for me. And so we need to understand that God provides things for us that are helpful and good to us. And so we don't want to have this selfish heart. Not like Korah and the others who were selfish in their ways. So what I want us to do is to remind ourselves of the good of God. And recognize that everything, as Ernie pointed out in class, everything is not going to run well for us. I mean, you can get on the racetrack and think it's all nice and smooth, and you wear those light tennis shoes he's talking about, and somebody threw a rock out there, and you step on it. And you think, oh, my race is finished because now I'm hurt. No, you continue running. Our life might look like the wilderness sometimes, but we don't want to lose sight of what God gives us. We need to give God the thanks for all good things that we have. You just think about it. All the good things that we have far outweigh what can cause us problems in our life. Remember, Paul said, this light affliction is only but for a season. And so we need to think about that. And we need to be careful that we don't find ourselves complaining because something's not going exactly our way. And say, God, why have you forsaken me? He hasn't. Why have you led me down this path, God? That's what the Israelites were saying. You and Moses, you and God have brought us here to die. God hasn't brought us here to die, but to give us life. And so think about that. Think about your life and make it even stronger, and try to avoid the complaining, the murmuring, and find the happiness of what God gives to us. If there's anyone tonight who is in need of prayers for strength, for courage, to be baptized, we know that the Scriptures teach us that we must hear, believe, repent, confess, and be baptized to begin that race towards eternal life. We want you to come. We plead with you to come. Whatever needs you might have, as together we stand and as we sing.
When the trumpet of the Lord shall sound, the time shall be no more, and the morning breaks eternal, bright and fair. When the sailors shall gather over on the other shore, and the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, when the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. Let us labor for the Master from the dauntless setting sun. Let us talk of all His wondrous love and care. Then when all of life is over and our work on earth is done, and the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, when the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there.
Is there anything else that needs to be mentioned? Don't forget the graduation luncheon this Sunday, and we can celebrate with the young men that are graduating, and give them our love, and hope that they know that we're always here for them, even when they go off to school. Is there anything else?
I understand there's a sign-up sheet.
Yes.
Oh, sign-up sheet in the foyer for that. Oh, it's in, who are you again? Sister Brenda has the sign-up sheet. I gotta start remembering everybody's names again. But please remember to look at that and sign up so we can take care of that. Remember, we're glad that Brother Dennis had another birthday, and Bill's gonna take care of that. Who has the dismissal prayer?
Brother Bill.
Brother Bill has the dismissal prayer. All right.
Our Father, Lord in heaven, thank you for everyone present. Thank you for this middle of the week opportunity to study the Word, to enrich ourselves, to learn. Thank you for the lesson Bernie has brought to us, and thank you for the devotion that Ed brought to us. Thank you for every visitor and everyone present here. We ask you to be with us throughout the remainder of the week. And as always, thank you so much for the gift of your Son and your love for us. While we're yet sinners, Jesus Christ came to this earth to die for our sins. Help us to reflect and return that love for Him by our attendance and our actions, and the way we treat others. Please forgive us of our shortcomings and sins. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.